And welcome to another Joseph Morris live stream. If you're new here, hi, how are you? I am Joseph Morris. I am really cold. It's like -10 here where I'm at, so please excuse if I stutter a little bit. But I knew the moment this story broke, which just broke like 15 minutes ago, I had to go up here on my YouTube in my cold studio with my cold dog, who's all curled up right now, Miss Gabby, to be the first one on YouTube to break this story. So if you want to stay up to date on breaking news stories and be the first in the know about the Prince Andrew crime trial, please make sure you subscribe, ring the bell so you never miss a live. Let's get into it. So this just came out that Prince Andrew will be going to court. So Prince Andrew tried to throw out the case by saying that he never got it. Second, he tried to say that it was out of jurisdiction because Virginia Giuffre was in Australia. And now he's saying a deceased Epstein covers him from having to go to court because of this settlement, which he was a third party to, and he shouldn't have never have known about this settlement at all. But somehow he knew about it, and not to bring any more shame to the royal family, he decided to use a dead criminal's settlement that he was supposed to know to protect the royal family. How that protects the royal family by basically admitting that you're guilty AF by trying to get out of it using someone else's settlement, and doesn't ring true to me at all. In fact, kind of says that you're guilty because you said, if I did it, I would be covered under this settlement, which my dead friend who is a convicted offender has settled upon. That brings way more shame than if he just owned up to it and said, yeah, I made some mistakes in my past. And that's something Virginia Giuffre said as well. She said, if Prince Andrew had just said he was sorry, none of this would have happened the way it did. But because this has unfolded the way it has, you're going to court, buddy. And this is also something that's interesting in the past couple of days is she actually was offered a settlement of £5 million. And Virginia Giuffre said, you know what? No, I'm not going to take that settlement. I want to see you in court because I want to show everybody that no one is above the law when it comes to this sort of heinous crimes. And this has been decided upon by Judge Kaplan himself because the judge actually went and threw Epstein's settlement out. So let's get into what it has to say. A federal judge in New York denied a motion to dismiss a lawsuit against Prince Andrew filed by Virginia Giuffre, a woman who alleges she was trafficked to the royal when she was underage. Miss Giuffre's complaint is neither unintelligible nor vague nor ambiguous, Judge Lewis A Kaplan wrote in the ruling. Quote, it alleges discrete incidents of abuse in particular circumstances at 3 identifiable locations. It identifies to whom it attributes that abuse, end quote. So during this hearing, and I feel really bad for everybody who is prosecuting Prince Andrew because they play dirty. The prosecution... The defense for Prince Andrew are not nice people. They are known to dox people. They are known to use people's names that, are pseudonyms. So let's just say they go by Jane. They'll call them by the real name, Gabby Morris here. They'll try to dox them. They'll try to threaten them. They'll try to gaslight them. And in this particular instance, in the hearing, for the court hearing for Prince Andrew, one of the defense was that Virginia Giuffre's ruling is too vague. And Judge Kaplan was like, actually, I think everybody knows what she's talking about when she says this, because one of our presidents is not in office anymore. What they meant by that, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure what President Judge Kaplan was referring to, but he's basically saying, we know exactly what Virginia Giuffre is talking about. We don't need to play that game in my court. Her lawsuit isn't that vague, and we understand it fully. There needs to be no more definition. Stop playing dumb is what Judge Kaplan said to Prince Andrew's team. Prince Andrew's team, by the way, his lawyer is like a Hollywood lawyer that represented Armie Hammer and Bill Cosby, and he's going to cost the UK taxpayer a pretty penny, but more on that in a bit. Giuffre alleged in the lawsuit that the late financier Jeffrey Epstein trafficked her and forced her to his friends, including the prince, and that Andrew was aware she was underage in the US at that time. And that's something that's very interesting to point out here, is that Prince Andrew knew she was being trafficked and knew she was being underage. And that has also come out recently this week as well, is that he knew that what he was doing was illegal. And not just that the act is illegal, but he's supporting this entire industry. He's supporting people being kept as slaves, essentially. He's supporting all the other assets that go along with that. Obviously, there's most likely other things involved in this act, including, maybe even kidnapping or drugs or, crime or gang violence. All these things play into what he did. And it's not just about this one act, but because if he actually cared about society as a whole, he's actually disrupting society here and doesn't care about really the public at all or anybody but himself. And I think that really came through in this ruling. And so moving on, she writes, she alleges the prince abused her at Ghislaine Maxwell's home in London, at Epstein's private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands, and at his mansion in Manhattan. So these abuses took place all over the world. I mean, I actually read some reports that it was in Africa as well, but this particular one with Prince Andrew happened in London. And this guy named Brian Henry from East 17 called me up. I want to give a shout out to him because he actually found my number somehow. And he called me after my last live stream. And he told me about how he actually met Ghislaine Maxwell in a club in London. It was very weird. His name was Brian Harvey. Sorry. He's from a band called East 17. He calls me up after my live stream and tells me that he was with a manager who also has these allegations against him. His name was Tom Walken. And this manager were brought to a London nightclub. And in that London nightclub called Brown's Nightclub in Covent Gardens, they pressed a button and that button opened up a secret passageway to different rooms. And in that back room was Ghislaine Maxwell, Prince Andrew, and a man who had his back turned, but he thought it was Robert Murdoch. So Robert Murdoch is also somehow involved in this. And obviously we also have names coming out other places like Bill Clinton. So this is not over. This is only the beginning. This is only the tip of the iceberg. And a lot of people have a lot of stories about the behavior done by Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein and all the high profile people that are involved. So the Prince Andrew being brought into the civil lawsuit is only going to start more and more people being brought to the forefront. So thank you, Brian Harvey, for bringing that story to my attention. So getting into it, she alleges the prince abused her. Jeffrey brought her case under the Child Victims Act, a New York state law enacted in 2019 that expanded the statute of limitations in abuse cases to give survivors more opportunities to seek justice. So this Child Victims Act actually, again, talking about how the defense team for Prince Andrew are disgusting human beings, they actually wanted to say that this Defense Act, this Child Victims Act, was unconstitutional because it basically is extending the statute of limitations for too long. And by that point, a lot of the victims start remembering things poorly. And again, this is just a defense strategy that they use where they say, hey, are you sure you remember that correctly? Are you sure you're just, not misremembering? Are you just crazy? That's the kind of stuff that they do. And Prince Andrew's defense team actually wanted to say that the Child Victims Act, which is done by Andrew Cuomo, who I'm sure you guys know. Andrew Cuomo was a former governor of New York who actually instituted this Child Victims Act that increased the statute of limitations, which is ironic considering all the allegations against him. His hands aren't dirty either, but he's the one that put this Victims Act in that allowed for Virginia Giuffre. I think she filed it within 5 days of the statute of limitations. So they're trying to throw this Child Victims Act out. And in my opinion, I believe that there should be no statute of limitations for anybody who has these kind of crimes done against them, that these crimes should be able to be pursued at any time. And I think it's just, there shouldn't be a statute of limitations. So going on, Prince Andrew has denied the allegations and had moved to dismiss the suit. Obviously, we all know that Prince Andrew said that he doesn't sweat In this lawsuit, Virginia Giuffre actually went ahead and said, hey, prove me you can't sweat. He says, I don't have the proof, even though not being able to sweat is a huge medical condition that you should have proof for. He also said that he was at Pizza Express in Woking, and then there's no such reports, even though he's surrounded by security at all times. And his own daughter, Princess Beatrice, says she doesn't remember Pizza Express at Woking. So his way to dismiss this is completely wrong. He says he never met Virginia Giuffre, even though there's a photo of him. He says that photo was photoshopped. It's not. There's also other witnesses that saw Prince Andrew at a nightclub. And, there's more witnesses coming forward that basically corroborate Virginia Giuffre's story. We have one person, Caroline, basically saying the same accusations as Virginia Giuffre said. And, this is just getting really hairy, and this is not looking good for Prince Andrew. So he's probably sweating right now, even though he says he can't. His attorneys argued that her lawsuit violated the terms of her 2009 settlement agreement with Epstein in Florida, in which she agreed to a general release of claims against Epstein and others. That settlement, which has released to the public last week, shows that Epstein paid Giuffre $500,000 to drop the case without any admission of liability or fault. The prince's name does not explicitly appear as a party. So that's exactly it. And everybody pointed this out from the beginning. Prince Andrew was never actually named in the lawsuit. So how is he protected? He's his own he's his own party. So he shouldn't be protected by this. Something that the big argument in the court was he's a potential defendant. But the thing with Prince Andrew was that by the time this settlement was already done, he was already an offender. So he's not a potential defendant because he's already done what he did. So how is he going to be a potential defendant? It made absolutely no sense. It was so vague, and it could have been ruled either way. And luckily, Judge Kaplan ruled the way in favor, and Prince Andrew was going to court. So his attempt to throw this case out has not worked. However, Giuffre's attorney, David Bois, argued the settlement is irrelevant to her claim against the prince. Nothing Andrew did not know about it at the time, and that didn't apply to him. In the ruling, Kaplan wrote that both sides put forth reasonable interpretations of the settlement meanings. The agreement, therefore, is ambiguous. Accordingly, the determination of the meaning of the release language in the 2009 agreement must await further proceedings, he wrote. So if this case is not settled, so this is very interesting. This case could be settled outside of a court. And the reason why Prince Andrew would want it settled outside of court is that his name isn't dragged through the mud any more than it already is. Like, I don't know if Prince Andrew's reputation could get any worse at this point. I don't know if it can, but he's basically wants to keep this out of court. He doesn't want anybody knowing his dirty laundry. And something that was really interesting was he actually wanted to set a precedence that all of the testimonies of the people that Virginia Giuffre is going to bring forward, which I believe is like 6 people, he wants all those kept under wraps. He doesn't want anybody reporting on it, anything. Which is a move like I've never heard of someone doing. I don't know if that's possible, that you can just like keep all that information out of the public eye. But hey, he's the prince, so you never know. If the case is not settled, Prince Andrew could face a trial between September and December 2022. The long-running allegations against Andrew have already dramatically tarnished his public standing, and he stepped back from royal duties in late 2019. Obviously, his royal duties were stepped back after that disastrous BBC interview, which has become infamous, which, by the way, he's so unself-aware. He actually thought he did really well in that interview. He thought he did really well. And that's how unself-aware this guy is. So very interesting that, he had to step back from the royal duties, which is so weird because why is he even still called Duke of York if he had to step back from his royal duties? If he had to step back from his royal duties, why is he still getting paid close to $400,000 a year by Queen Elizabeth II, his mother, if he doesn't do any royal duties? I don't understand this. And how is he still like owning chalets that are worth $17 million, 17 million pounds? I don't really get it. Like, I think this guy should have been removed from his titles a long time ago. Like, if you're no longer doing services, I think you shouldn't be called Duke of whatever. And I just find that kind of weird. Like, even Duchess of York is his ex-wife, Fergie, and they're no longer married, and they actually still live together, which I thought was kind of weird. So he could potentially use Duchess of York in his favor to basically help defend him against the Virginia Giuffre case. Although I really don't think that will reflect well on the monarchy. I just don't think this reflects well at all. I think the damage has been severely done in this scenario. And the fact that he tried to use a convicted trafficker, a child trafficker's settlement to basically defend himself. I mean, you literally use somebody who's been convicted of a crime to use in your defense. It's just like wrapping my head around how that is so damaging to your reputation in and of itself. And then on top of everything else, you are going to court and that failed miserably. Like, it's just getting so bad for Prince Andrew right now. And Queen Elizabeth, if you're watching, please strip your son of all of his titles immediately if you want the monarchy to be relevant in 2022. I know you're trying to gaslight us with the Kate Middleton's birthday photos, her 40th birthday photos. But, these scandals are not going to go anywhere. And until you start raising and parenting your children, I think we'll all just calm down a little bit. But until then, this is going to be fodder for the next couple years. And who knows where the monarchy is going to end up at that point. Like, I read this article by The Economist that said a lot of the royal monarchy relies on the consent of the public for it to survive. So the irony of Prince Andrew not asking for consent says a lot. It says a lot about where the monarchy is going to be in a couple of years. So I think you need to get rid of this guy as soon as possible. So if it's not settled, the Buckingham Palace declined to comment, saying, quote, "We would not comment on what is an ongoing legal matter." Of course they're not. So obviously Epstein, who pled guilty in 2008 to charges, and they call themselves, these kids, Prostitution. I can't say that on my channel, but that's what they call these kids. But these are not Prostitutions. These are children. So I don't like it when they say, oh, this is in 2008 related to these pro charges, because these are not pro charges. These are people held against their will to do these acts that they didn't want to do. I mean, Virginia Giuffre was held up against her will, didn't want to do these acts. And that was actually a wedge in her relationship with her ex-boyfriend. And her ex-boyfriend went on record saying that she didn't want to do these acts. And then therefore, they actually broke up because of that. So I think this sort of writing is really wrong. I think he should be called what he is, and, not try to make this look like this was a consensual agreement between two parties, because it wasn't. These were children. So in July 2019, prosecutors accused him of carrying out a decades-long scheme of abuse of underage girls, flying them on private islands to his properties in Florida, New York, New Mexico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. He died by offing himself in prison before he could face trial. Now, there's a lot of speculation if he actually did off himself in prison, because obviously he's potentially a part of the spies. There's the Mossad spies. I know there's a big thing on YouTube. I was watching some videos by my friend Brian Harvey from East 17. He has a video on the Mossad spies, and Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, Robert Maxwell, was apparently a spy too. So Robert Maxwell also died under these same suspicious circumstances as her boyfriend, Epstein. It's so weird how that became full circle. I mean, her dad passed away from weird circumstances that a lot of people said spies did it. And now Epstein had the same thing happen to him, where people are very on the fence about what actually happened and how he actually was murdered, or did it himself. And was he a part of a spies? I mean, they lost the tapes. And then we also have this weird thing where, the person that lost the tapes was Maureen Comey, who is James Comey's daughter. James Comey was fired by Donald Trump. And now Maureen Comey lost the Epstein tapes. And then now she was also a lead prosecutor in the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. It's just also weird. And it looks to a lot of people like it's staged. And what's more is that now it's all coming out that there's been 3 jurors that basically said to have lied on the questionnaire that said that they weren't victims. And in order for you to serve on the Ghislaine Maxwell trial case, you actually could not have been a victim. Like that was not allowed. You could not be somebody that had this happen to you. You could not be a victim to be on the jury. But they apparently lied on the questionnaire and said that they weren't victims. And then they sat on the jury. And then later on, it came out that they were victims, and now there's a potential for a mistrial, and Ghislaine Maxwell could be tried all over again. So was that planned? Was that all of a part of the Maureen Comey's plan to basically cause a mistrial at the very end of it? Like, there's so many crazy things that happened in this case. I've never heard of a case this wild before. A federal jury convicted Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's former girlfriend and close associate. Ghislaine Maxwell, for the record, is also married to a guy. She has a secret husband who actually does data for shipping. Her husband did data for shipping, and some people would say that he's actually works in trafficking himself. And it's just all weird because how is it that your husband basically works in trafficking? And you have a secret husband. It's also weird. Ghislaine Maxwell, I thought you were single and dating Epstein, but no, you had a husband yourself. And Epstein was her boyfriend. A federal jury convicted her in December on 5 federal counts, including trafficking a minor and conspiracy. Giuffre was not one of the 4 women who testified in Maxwell's trial that they had been abused. Still, she was mentioned in the trial when Carolyn, one of the victims, testified that Giuffre had recruited her to come to Epstein's home in Palm Beach, Florida. So as we all know, Virginia Giuffre wasn't thinking straight. She was a victim. She was a child. She was traumatized. But she was actually trafficking other women as well. She was recruiting them in a sort of like pyramid scheme to recruit other women into Epstein's like crazy island. And, Prince Andrew may actually use that against her in the trial, saying that, hey, your hands aren't clean either. You were a part of this entire pyramid scheme too. But I don't think that should be used against her. I'm going to see how many people are here. 1,100 people. Thank you so much for joining me. Please make sure you press subscribe, like my video. It really helps out my channel. Yes, so let's get into more of what's going down. So Prince Andrew is going to court. This is breaking news. And this is a funny article that I read. Prince Andrew was in good spirits over Christmas as he thought Maxwell would be cleared. Well, it turns out that he wasn't. It writes here, Prince Andrew ate Christmas lunch with the Queen at Windsor Castle. But days later, the British socialite Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of recruiting and trafficking young girls for Jeffrey Epstein. So he thought the cat was in the bag and that he thought, Ghislaine Maxwell would get off, because in the Ghislaine Maxwell case, there was the star evidence really was 4 testimonies done by women. It wasn't like there wasn't smoking gun evidence. Somehow that evidence all got lost. There was like hard drives full of all this evidence, and then the FBI lost it, according to some reports. So they thought they were going to win because it was only the testimonies of women, and it was a criminal lawsuit, and the bar obviously in a criminal lawsuit is very high. So they thought for sure, they would get off this case, and it wasn't the case. They believed the women. The jury actually unanimously decided beyond a reasonable doubt that Ghislaine Maxwell was the madame in the Epstein case, and she was convicted, which is really bad news for Prince Andrew, because obviously in a civil lawsuit case, the bar for conviction is much lower. And because testimonies are able to convict her on a criminal case, it's not looking good for Prince Andrew, because even though there's no like photographic evidence, I don't believe there's only testimonies by other people, that's enough to convict somebody. So that is very bad. That is not looking good for Prince Andrew. And it is kind of suspicious that, all of a sudden there could be a mistrial based on what the jury has told the media, because the jury, again, said on the questionnaire they weren't victims. And then it came out later in the media that they were victims of these sort of crimes against them at one point. So there's also this article that came out this week. It came out this week. Prince Andrew's Skype calls with very upset Beatrice and Eugenie after he quit ski trip. So as you all know, Prince Andrew, he didn't actually go to this ski trip, which is kind of nice. I mean, they were skiing after the New Year's when everybody else was working. They were at the slopes in like Sweden or something, Verbier, I think it's called. And he was, back at home. Was he working? No, he was actually hiding. He was hiding. He didn't want to be seen out with his family while this civil lawsuit was being brought to the courts. And so it is kind of weird that they got this Skype call where Princess Beatrice was calling her dad all upset because he couldn't make it to the ski trip. But I think the real reason why was because Prince Andrew has a team of advisors, including solicitor nicknamed Good News Gary and barrister who acted for Britain's most violent prisoner as royal waits to see if judge will throw out the lawsuit. So again, this is written this week, a couple days ago, but Prince Andrew has this huge team that he works with. And it's not just him and his Hollywood lawyer that defends Armie Hammer, who is a cannibal, and, Bill Cosby, who is infamous these days. He also has a team behind him, and it's a huge team that costs a lot of money, including this guy named Good News Gary. I wonder what he does. What does Good News Gary does? He probably comes up with great news for Prince Andrew. He probably comes up with ways to gaslight the public. And I'll get more on that in a bit, but we talked a little bit about on my channel about BBC, talking about how they're corrupt BBC because they're basically interviewing Dershowitz, who we'll get to at the end. Dershowitz was Epstein's previous lawyer. And Dershowitz, I'll just get into it now. Dershowitz was the one that actually lobbied Donald Trump to give Ghislaine Maxwell a preemptive pardon. So this guy was Epstein's lawyer, Dershowitz, and he actually was like, hey, can you, Donald Trump, get Prince Andrew a pardon? So this guy is complete trash. He also has Virginia Giuffre accusing him of certain, allegations as well that are similar to Prince Andrew's allegations. So this guy is being attacked by Virginia Giuffre. He wants to get all these cases against Prince Andrew and himself thrown out by contacting Donald Trump. I guess Donald Trump didn't say yes because that didn't happen. The Ghislaine Maxwell case still ended up going to court. And Donald Trump also, for the record, banned Jeffrey Epstein from his Mar-a-Lago resort. So Donald Trump looks like the good guy in this. And I just want to clarify that, even though his name keeps coming up, but it's always coming up in good ways. So Donald Trump said no to Dershowitz, basically trying to get the Ghislaine Maxwell pardon thrown out. But back to where I was with Good News Gary. And, he has this huge team behind him, Prince Andrew, and this team is not cheap. So it's about £2 million. Details of Prince Andrew's advisors is about £2 million a year. And he was basically racking up these huge bills. So Prince Andrew legals and PR costs are going to be $3 million. And obviously Prince Andrew doesn't have anybody, funding his money besides his mother, because he's not out there working, pounding the pavement. He's actually getting all this money from his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, even though he stepped down from royal duties in 2019. How is he going to pay for these $3 million? This huge team, Good News Gary, gaslighting the public, sending out, Meghan Markle bashing news pieces to basically distract from the scandals that are happening at the Windsor Castle, How is he going to pay for all this? Is it going to be the Queen's? Well, this is in our article right here. The Queen will be asked to bankroll Prince Andrew if he agrees to a multi-million-dollar settlement with Virginia Giuffre, report says. So this is a report saying that the Queen actually is going to be funding this settlement. Queen Elizabeth II will be asked to help Prince Andrew financially if he agrees to a multi-million-dollar settlement with Virginia Giuffre, the Telegraph reports. Virginia Giuffre has accused Prince Andrew of abusing her when she was 17 years old as part of the Jeffrey Epstein trafficking ring. The Telegraph understands that the Queen, who is already funding the Duke of York's legal battle, will pay towards it. So isn't this crazy? I think this is crazy. The Telegraph also understands that the cost of a settlement would be in the region of $5 million. But as I said before, Virginia Giuffre is not going to be settling with Prince Andrew, even though she'll be offered £5 million. She wants to take him to court. And go Virginia Giuffre. That's an icon The Queen has funded Andrew's legal fees since he appointed a lawyer in February 2021 after a grueling BBC interview focusing on his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. As y'all know from this awful interview, he basically admits that they hung out with Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein. There's photos of them on the Queen's Lodge hanging out. And, that's all because of Prince Andrew inviting them to Windsor Castle. Prince Andrew also had friends with Harvey Weinstein, who, if you don't know who he is, he's this Hollywood guy that basically, forced himself on a ton of actresses and women and has been convicted himself. So Andrew has made multiple attempts to get it thrown out, but it's not thrown out. And here's where it gets interesting. And I'm sure you guys read about this because this was making huge headlines around the world. To fund some of the fees, the Duke is selling his $23 million Swiss ski chalet, which he owns with his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. But here's where it's kind of weird. He had to settle debt to do this. So this is, again, showing how gross Prince Andrew is, because he actually had debt. So he actually bought this chalet, but he actually still owed 6.6 million pounds on this chalet. So he took possession of the chalet, but he still owed 6.6 million pounds worth of debt on it to a French socialite after buying the Swiss ski chalet from her in 2014. So before he had to sell this to fund his, lawyer fees, which I find kind of confusing. Like, why is it that Queen Elizabeth is funding him and then he still has to sell his chalet? I'm not too sure how that works. Like, is a chalet sell going to Queen Elizabeth and then he's getting the money from the chalet from Queen Elizabeth? Like, I don't know how that works, but either way, he's having to sell the chalet to fund all these lawyer fees. And I think that's the real reason why Princess Beatrice was crying on the phone with Prince Andrew, because this is the last time that they'll ever be allowed in that chalet again, because now they have to sell it to fund these legal fees. So Isabelle de Rouve is 74 years old, and she was actually in a legal battle with Prince Andrew to get this 6.6 million pounds back from him. But because of this huge development in the case that he's selling this chalet that they were all going on vacation without Prince Andrew to, he's able to basically settle the $5 million debt, the Verbier property, and sell this beautiful chalet, 16.6 million pounds, to fund Good News Gary, who is gaslighting the entire UK public. So again, 1730 people here. Let me just read some of your chats right now. Dun, 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 dun. The Queen had two choices when she became Queen: either be loyal to her people as her vow stated, or be a hands-on mom. Guess what she had to choose? The crown, Michelle Bobola writes. And I agree. Like, that's the thing about this case is, I find it very, very hard to watch this case unfold because Prince Andrew obviously needs to be parented. And it's so weird to me that he's still being parented by the Queen. And, the Queen needs to really step up and put her foot down when it comes to her son, Prince Andrew, and the way he's behaving, because it's highly problematic that she's just basically allowing this to happen. And I actually did some more research on this because I found it kind of interesting. Like, why is she basically allowing people to, walk all over her essentially? And I found this article. So, Queen's relative sentenced to 10 months in prison for assaulting women at Castle Home. So it is kind of weird that there is this sort of cyclical behavior within the monarchy of people being abusive. It writes, Queen Elizabeth's relative was sentenced on Tuesday to 10 months in prison for assaulting a guest at his ancestral home of Glamis Castle in Scotland. So this sort of stuff kind of runs in the family. This is from February 24th, 2021. And so this is from last year, but there is this sort of history in the royal family that there is basically people who, have this sort of behavior. And we'll get more into Prince William in a bit, but even how Prince Charles, cheated on Princess Diana, the rumor is, I think there's something to be said for the Queen Elizabeth basically being desensitized to this sort of behavior within our family. So thank you for that comment. So again, just talking about how the defense team are terrible people. They'll most likely use Prince Andrew's lawyers could call Maxwell victim for defense in a bid to prove accuser Virginia Roberts wasn't victim, because they're going to try to paint Virginia Roberts as a co-conspirator, because Virginia at one point did actually help recruit for Epstein. So that was a little development. So just to back up what Virginia Giuffre is saying, this is an interesting article saying Prince Andrew ogled my breasts from car, says James Cracknell's wife. So rowing hero James Cracknell's wife says Prince Andrew ogled her breasts. So obviously this is financier Jordan Cracknell is the one whose breasts were ogled by Prince Andrew on the left in that beautiful red dress. Then we have on the right here, he's an Olympian named James Cracknell. And basically she's coming on record saying that Prince Andrew is a total creep, writing, financier Jordan Cracknell, who married the double gold Olympian last year, claims she has 2 run-ins with the Duke of York. She supported Virginia Giuffre over her abuse legal action against the royal. Jordan, 36, told The Sun of a random encounter with him in London where she felt he was staring down her top as she cycled next to his car. Responding to a news article about Miss Giuffre's U.S. lawsuit against the prince, she wrote on Instagram, "Good move. She deserves her day in court. I've had 2 run-ins with this guy. Massive ego. I was riding my bike and I had this low-cut top on. I was at the traffic lights near Hyde Park. You could kind of see down my shirt just as I was on my bike. He was right at the lights and he had the window down and he just liked looking down my shirt. I'm at the red light and there was this very odd moment when we kind of made eye contact and that was it. He made no bones about not looking. It was during one of the lockdown summers. I can't remember which." End quote. Jordan, originally from New York, also once volunteered at the Duke's pitch at the Palace Business Support Initiative, and he can't come across as kind of arrogant. Andrew, 61, has always fiercely denied Miss Giuffre's allegations. So Jordan basically says that he was looking down her shirt as she was cycling, and it made her feel very uncomfortable. And it basically plays into this idea that Prince Andrew is a total creep, a total, awful person. And she also has this run-in where she's a financier. She says he was very arrogant. And that kind of plays into what the royal courtiers have been saying. There's royal insiders that says that Prince Andrew actually rules with an iron fist. And Prince Harry, there's an article that came out about Prince Harry saying that he was very upset about his mangoes. There was no mangoes for him on the table. So Prince Andrew, if you kind of get a glimpse into the kind of person he is, he doesn't seem like the nicest person. He kind of seems like a very awful kind of human being. So let me just read your chats here. Hi, Joe. Just joining in, Ricard says. Thank you for joining in. Thank you for everybody for being here. We're just talking about how the case for Prince Andrew is being brought ahead, and it's absolutely a groundbreaking development. Truth come to light. Eagle Eye, I agree. It's been going on for years. They are evil and think they can do what they want. The internet has about got them now for what they really are. Exactly. And I think this entire case has been really about bringing to how the royals actually are and showing who their true colors. We just had this financier talk about how Prince Andrew stares at her chest while she's biking, how he's arrogant. We also have Prince Andrew trying to throw out this court case by Virginia Giuffre. It didn't work. Judge Kaplan ruled in our favor. This civil lawsuit is going to court. These people are trying to hide their true colors, but because of the internet and because of the YouTubers and because of people like you, all this is coming to light. All these people are being held accountable. I had one guy call me up after my live and talk about how he believes Robert Murdoch is involved. I believe there's a whole host of other people who, once this ball starts getting rolling, there's going to be more people brought forward. Bill Clinton is one of them. Robert Murdoch, who I mentioned. We have some other high profile people. And Virginia Giuffre says she's not going to settle out of court. She wants these people prosecuted. And I hope more people come forward and basically prosecute these people in a court of law so that the truth will come out and that these people are not above law. No one is above the law at the end of the day. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate everybody being here. And this is kind of an interesting article and how the royal family are facing some financial struggles and how the court of public opinion has essentially destroyed them. The end of Fergie and Friends. I don't know if you guys watched this, but apparently it's a YouTube channel. Duchess of York reveals she is pausing her YouTube series, which saw her read children's books and dress up in costumes. So the Duchess of York has announced she is taking a break from her YouTube series Storytime with Fergie and Friends. Sarah Ferguson, 62, who is commonly known as Fergie, revealed she will be temporarily stop posting daily videos on her YouTube channel, which she started in lockdown. The mother of two started the channel in April 2020 in order to keep children entertained at home. In an Instagram story shared yesterday, Fergie reassured her fans that this break is only temporary and they will soon be updated until the show resumes. So I never saw this. Story time with Fergie and Friends is being canceled. Let's watch a little clip. Okay, this is...
Little Red Riding Hood, retold by Leslie Sims, illustrated by Bao Lu. Little Red Riding Hood is setting off to visit her granny. Stay on the path, says her mother. Stay on the path. Granny's cottage is in the very middle of the very magical forest. Yellow flowers, thinks Little Red Riding Hood. Granny loves those. So she wanders off
I'm not too sure how I feel about this.
Oh no, to pick some. She's forgotten what her mother said. Have you? Suddenly, she sees a big, bad wolf. Where are you going? He asks. Oh, I'm taking my granny some cake. The wolf's tummy rumbles. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Little Red Riding...
Well, that's weird. I'm sure no one will miss that. That's for sure. Sorry, Fergie. I don't think anybody will care. But apparently she's now canceling the show because of the civil lawsuit up against Prince Andrew. But I'm not too sure people will really miss it. No offense. But here's another article that came up. Talk of the town. Will the Countess of Derby still curtsy before Prince Andrew when he next visits Knowsley Hall? So this is the Countess of Derby. Obviously, she's very formal and she does have this sort of ability to curtsy towards royalty. But people are basically questioning if she will after the allegations against Prince Duke of York came out, and now that it is going to court, and now that his name has been tarnished irreparably. So I don't know what you guys think. And this is obviously Prince Andrew, only person on the planet believing royal comeback at possible, expert claims. So basically this expert is saying that, you know, even if he does get found not guilty within a court, the damage has already been done to his reputation. And then obviously there's issues about why he still has these titles. You know, why does he still have his military titles? Why is he still going under Duke of York? And Prince Andrew must now give up military titles, says Iraq War Hero Colonel. And it says the Iraq War Hero Colonel Tim Collins has become the first senior former officer to publicly call on Prince Andrew to give up his honorary military titles. He said the allegations surrounding the Duke of York and his links to the late financier Jeffrey Epstein and convicted trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell were embarrassing for everyone. The former commanding officer of the Royal Irish Regiment, of which Andrew is colonel-in-chief, also said the royals should jump before he is pushed. So basically, people are asking himself, Prince Andrew, to step down. And of course, Queen Elizabeth will not necessarily do it because Queen Elizabeth is very nice and in some ways kind of, I don't know, helps with this, encourages this behavior, because I just don't really see her doing that. I don't really see her stripping his titles away. And so she's 95 years old and she's had a rough couple years. Her husband, Prince Philip, died. So next in line is Prince Charles. So Charles could be the one to strip Andrew of titles regardless of the outcome of Giuffre case. So again, I don't know. I think, Prince Andrew needs to have his titles removed, and it could be up to Prince Charles for the one to do it. But I don't know what you guys think. And this is where things kind of get weird is Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers claim they have found a third juror in her trafficking trial who lied about being abused. So basically her trial could be, thrown out because of the jurors. And right now they're working on a deal. So we'll drop Ghislaine Maxwell's perjury charges to avoid trafficking retrial. So if you're following this case very closely, right now they're trying to make a deal with Ghislaine Maxwell where essentially if she fails at getting a mistrial, they'll drop 2 charges against her. And these charges are done by Virginia Giuffre and they're perjury charges where basically Ghislaine Maxwell under oath lied. And now she's facing charges for lying, which is perjury. And those charges will be dropped if she doesn't get a mistrial. And so hopefully this deal will sweeten Ghislaine Maxwell's team from not having another trial. And hopefully will prevent the victims from having to retestify because she does have a chance at getting a mistrial. And if it is found out that these jurors did in fact lie, she could get a mistrial. And that's where we're at right now. But the way they're trying to prevent that is by dropping charges against her. So let's hope for that. And speaking of people who could be potentially, a part of this heinous acts by Prince Andrew, we have this one picture by Lord Peter Mandelson, parties with Jeffrey Epstein in photo taken after he had been charged in underage probe. This is Lord Peter Mandelson. He's grinning as Jeffrey Epstein blows out the candles on a birthday cake in a photo taken months after he was charged in an underage probe. So the never before seen photograph shows Tony Blair's former spin doctor at a party for the monster in his Paris lair. So this guy works closely with Tony Blair, who has a lot of people think Tony Blair should have war crimes brought up against him because they brought the UK public to war and caused a lot of deaths. And Tony Blair is getting knighted by Queen Elizabeth. And a lot of people have a lot of issues with that. And a lot of people don't like Tony Blair, from what I understand, from the UK public. And so it is kind of weird that he's getting knighted and then also his former associate is actually seen partying with Epstein. So it's a little creepy. And this is Prince Andrew and the Prince of Darkness, which is Duke of York, or as Mandelson was known, also went on to enjoy a friendship. So it is kind of weird that they're all rubbing elbows together. And, what made Epstein so powerful, so amazing, and so great that people all wanted to hang out with him? Well, because he was providing and serving up underage girls, essentially. So this is very alarming that this guy, Lord Peter Mandelson, was seen hanging out with a convicted child predator. So these pictures are all resurfaced, and Lord Mandelson is confirmed to be hanging out with Epstein as well. He's also been confirmed to be with Prince Andrew. So it is a little scary that this is happening. And of course, we're talking about more people that could be brought forward. It's not only Lord Mandelson, but it's also Ghislaine Maxwell's co-conspirators. And here's the thing that I kind of thought was interesting. Will Camilla be called queen when Charles becomes king? There's been a new honor for Duchess of Cornwall, sparks curiosity. So Queen Elizabeth appoints wife of heir to throne, a royal lady of the most noble order of the Garter. So it's possible that when Queen Elizabeth dies, that this could be our new queen. Our new queen could be Camilla. So it is kind of weird. And then, of course, we have these photographs for Kate Middleton when she turned 40. And I kind of believe this is all just a big distraction from the Prince Andrew case. personally. And I'm not too sure how I feel about these photographs, but I do like how they're kind of like a nod towards previous photographs done by royalty. But I do feel like this is a big distraction from everything else that's going on with the royal family. So I just wanted to point out, why does the princess always have band-aids on her fingers? This is an article I came across, and it's just kind of like pointing out how the Duchess of Cambridge always has weird bandages on her fingers. And I think I have a video I wanted to play you guys. So let me just try to find it.
So why does Kate always have plasters or bandages on her fingers? Let's call it a hypothetical. First, bear in mind that she doesn't have a lot of physical jobs to do. They have a big staff. The live-in full-time nanny, to the team of gardeners. So it's unlikely she's cutting her fingers on shears. You do see this with people who suffer with eating disorders. I'm not saying she does have that. A dermatologist also weighed in saying it doesn't make a lot of sense because if she had cut her fingers, they wouldn't heal under the plaster. And it feels like it's always have plasters or bandages on her fingers.
Yeah, so basically in that video is pointing out that Kate always has bandages on her fingers. And I thought this was kind of weird, but apparently the bandages on your fingers means something that you could have an eating disorder. So I just really hope, like, when we're talking about like the potential queen being Camilla and all these things, and just seeing like history repeat itself with, you know, a lot of what's happening in the monarchy. I just hope, like, for her that she does get the help that she needs, if that is the case. And for some reason, let me just try to find the article again, because I do want to make sure I'm reading this correctly. So a dermatologist basically said this is a sign of an eating disorder. And I thought that was kind of very interesting. Bandages. So it's very common for women who suffer from bulimia to have cuts on their fingers and hands because they're inducing vomiting. As psychiatrist Dr. Stuart Fisher explaining that these marks could be Russell signs, which are typical of people who suffer from anorexia and bulimia. So this is according to a doctor saying that these bandages on Kate Middleton's fingers could be a sign of bulimia. And this is all news to me. I had no idea. Like, when I looked at her photos, I thought she did look very, very skinny. So Kate Middleton turns 40. So I this is all news to me. Like, I don't know if you guys think that she could potentially be suffering from an eating disorder. We know that Princess Diana did too. And, you know, with the bandages on her fingers, obviously she doesn't partake in hard labor. So what are those bandages for? Let's watch the video again.
So why does Kate always have plasters or bandages on her fingers? Let's call it a hypothetical. First, bear in mind that she doesn't have a lot of physical jobs to do. They have a big staff. The live-in full-time nanny, to the team of gardeners. So it's unlikely she's cutting her fingers on shears. You do see this with people who suffer with eating disorders. I'm not saying she does have that. A dermatologist also weighed in saying it doesn't make a lot of sense because if she had cut her fingers, they wouldn't heal under the plaster. And it feels like it's more to hide whatever is under there. And we would hope if she is suffering that they would be providing some kind of help.
Yeah, exactly. So I just want to see her healthy. I'm reading your chats. Calypso Kings writes, Kate cooks and has animals. I always have cuts on my fingers and hands, and I eat lots. Calypso writes, Kate has herself on a specific diet. I heard this discussed a few years back. She is very thin with a specific eating routine. She's very low in BMI, and this should be increased. Interesting. Okay. So that's something for me to consider. She is actually hiding an eating disorder, Leah Gia writes. Yeah, exactly. So I've heard this rumor, and I've only heard about it actually when I was doing my research for Prince Andrew, actually, because the research for Prince Andrew basically says that the royal family is trying to hide all of their own issues. And one of the issues obviously is Prince Andrew. Then there's Princess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton's eating disorder that they're trying to hide. And then we also have some more information about her eating disorder as well.
Have plasters or bandages on her fingers.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to play this one too.
This is actually around the time where there's some really big concerns. There were even rumours going around that Kate had collapsed, giving deja vu of Diana's collapse in Canada. Then we start seeing Kate dressed up in full coverage. And this is so easy for them to orchestrate PR-wise because the women have such rigid rules to follow. But even in the summer, you were seeing her covered head to toe.
Yeah, so basically people were kind of getting worried about her, you know, how skinny she was. And then also now we see her basically covering up after this worrying. So Meghan Markle also kind of complained about this as well, the strict rules that they have to follow being a princess. But let's just watch this again.
Around the time where there's some really big concerns. There were even rumours going around that Kate had collapsed, giving deja vu of Diana's collapse in Canada. Then we start seeing Kate dressed up in full coverage. And this is so easy for them to orchestrate PR-wise because the women have such rigid rules to follow. But even in the summer, you were seeing her covered head to toe.
Yeah, so it could just be her trying to cover up her eating disorder. And this is something else I came across was, you know, the Princess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton, was once upon a time a very athletic person. And then we see her trying to dull her shine a bit to basically let Prince William win a race. And let's play this clip too.
Trust me when I tell you, she slowed down for him. Lots of people don't realise that Kate was seriously athletic. She actually competed in so many sports. And it was even something she tried to hold on to leading up to that wedding, but the firm literally put the nail in the coffin, citing security reasons as to why she couldn't do it. And that's actually when you see her go from sort of sporty body type to worrying body type.
Yeah, so basically this person is saying that she's possibly hiding an eating disorder and, you know, she probably needs help. And, you know, a lot of it has to do with Prince William trying to not outshine Prince William, because there's a lot of speculation out there that Prince Charles was jealous of Princess Diana. And maybe the same kind of dynamic is going on here. And basically Kate Middleton had to dull her shine a bit and dull her athleticism to let Prince William come out on top in that race. And, you know, she kind of gave up sports for that reason because she wanted to basically not be as athletic so that, you know, maybe she's depressed or something like that. And that's the reason why she's losing all this weight. And there is some allegations that Prince William is having an affair. And I just want to play some clips from that because this is what people are saying. So apparently in this clip, she flinches when he touches her. Right here. Flinch. She kind of shoos him away. And this is at the No Time to Die premiere. So let me just play what the person had to say.
So there's two. There's here where Kate's doing the camera thing, is smiling, looking happy, trying to talk to him. And he's just non-responsive, so deadpan. And then here he touches her back to sort of move her and she kind of flinches a bit at his touch.
Yeah, so they're saying in this clip that Prince William is just ignoring Middleton. Let's play it again. So Kate Middleton is looking over trying to talk to Prince William, you know, but Prince William is just having none of it. So there is some allegations that Prince William has a love child with Rose Hanbury, Kate Middleton's best friend, and this was squashed by OK Magazine. But, you know, could just be fake. And there's also some rumors that Kate Middleton may actually like Prince Harry. Let's play that.
It definitely looks like she did. And then she would look absolutely smitten. And it was more like William was the third wheel than Harry. With Harry basically providing all the emotions you need in a marriage. Because when they first got married, Harry was left alone to babysit her. And it caused massive speculation because like this with Harry but not William. But he wasn't always the willing second husband. And there was a period where he had just had enough and he felt like he didn't even get privacy when it came to Kate, that she would just barge in his room.
So people are saying that maybe Kate Middleton liked Prince Harry. I don't know. Let me read your chats. Here in the UK is no way he can come back to public life. Exactly, Nicholas Glanfield. And, you know, it is kind of weird that like he thinks he can come back because his reputation has been tarnished so badly. And I really hope the Queen, you know, basically does put her foot down and stops her. So Natural Ginger Rice. No, he doesn't. Matt, Kate's family came from my country of Northumberland. They were coal miners, not a slave plantation. Interesting. Karen Leah, thanks for the respectful civil conversation here in chat. Yes, thank you so much. And everybody subscribe and ring the bell and get notifications. And I appreciate everybody coming and talking to me. Please make sure if you have any sort of speculation or anything you want me to look into, please just leave it right here on the right-hand side and I'll look into it. I enjoy reading all your speculation. Did anyone see the look they gave each other at the Christmas Carol show at Westminster Abbey? I actually did see a clip where Kate Middleton touched Prince William's hand and then Prince William didn't reciprocate her touch. And so I think a lot of people are looking at how there looks like there's problems in Kate Middleton's and Prince William's relationship. But I don't think they'll ever get separated because Queen Elizabeth was like, we've had enough divorces in our family. Please make sure you choose your next wife wisely. So I think they're willing to make it work. What exactly does this have to do with Andrew? Samantha Mustard writes, exactly. Look into them being German. I will. This is Sharon writes, this is how royalty and the press treat their women. Started with Sarah Fergie, then Diana, and now Kate. Yeah. Michelle Bobala, right? She's thin because she's a hands-on mom and is always on the go. All right, guys. I try to keep everything to under an hour. And thank you so much for hanging out with me as I explore different topics. If you want to stay up to date on Prince Andrew trial discussion with a little bit of royal rumors thrown in there, please make sure you subscribe, ring the bell so you never miss a live. I look forward to reading all your comments. And if you're watching this at a later time, please make sure you comment down below because I do read them. And I love you guys all. Thank you.